What is a privilege? A privilege is something that you are allowed to do that you might not otherwise be allowed to do. Um, and who can grant a privilege? Um, in our society and legal system, we got all this legal stuff. But let's think fundamentally here for a second. Um, we just talked about rights in another video. But a privilege is different than a right. A right you can exercise freely as long as you're not hurting other people. That's a right. A privilege is something that someone else grants you to let you do something you wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. Um, if someone extends a hand to you and says, "Hey, come have dinner at my house," you are privileged to be at their house. You're privileged to eat the food that they have cooked for you. You're privileged to be able to use their bathroom while you're there. These are all privileges that you've been afforded by the other person, your host, who has given you permission to take from their table and use their stuff while you're a guest in that house, for the duration of that good relationship that you've got with that host. That's a privilege, because you couldn't just do it on Tuesday when they invited you over for Friday evening. You couldn't just come early on Tuesday and just take their food and use their bathroom and everything else that you would be taking from them. It's not your right to do that, right? You are privileged to do it on Friday because they invited you over. That's a privilege. So recognize how it's different than a right. There are a lot of things that people talk about as being a right. I have a right to breathe clean air and drink clean water and eat clean food. Yeah, maybe you do. Certainly have the right to go seek those things out and get them for yourself, providing you're not harming anyone else. You have the right to travel freely without being impeded by someone who's just being obstreperous and trying to get in your way. With that right to travel, well, how do you have a right to travel? That becomes contentious. Can you travel by foot? Yes. Can you travel by bicycle? Yes. Can you travel by scooter? Yes. Can you travel by e-bike? Yes. Can you travel by motorcycle? Well, yes, but only if. Can you travel by car? Well, yes, but only if. You can see how a right to travel got turned into a privilege. Now, the question I've got is, by what right was that right turned into a privilege? Oh, well, you see, the public, they pay for the roads, and so if you're going to use the public's roads, you have to pay to be on it. Who are you paying? Well, the public. Okay. And the licensing fees and the registration fees and the smog certificates, if you're familiar with California's system. You've got all these hoops to jump through, insurance requirements and all these things. And like you shall do all of these things in order to have the privilege of traveling in your car. Okay, why? Why is that suddenly a privilege and not a right? Oh, well, because it's dangerous. Well, isn't a bicycle dangerous? Well, yeah, but this is different. Okay, well, why is it different? Oh, well, where on the roads? Oh, so it's a heaviness issue, is it? Well, yeah. Okay, well, why is it a heaviness issue? Well, because it's where on the roads, and we all pay for the roads. Okay. We'll get in. Some other video I'll talk about, paying for the roads as a paradigm, but the idea that what was once a privilege is now turned into a right is interesting because a lot of these roads, um, they were thoroughfares before there were taxes for roads. They were thoroughfares. They were areas you could travel on, and the state said, "Hey, you know what? We want to improve this, have more people use it. We're gonna pave it, and in order for us to pave it, we're going to need money, and so we're going to charge everyone money so that we can pave it." And now, what was a right for everyone to travel freely suddenly becomes a privilege that you can be charged a user fee for, and you can have your privileges revoked if you don't pay up. It's a change over time in the right to travel freely, whilst not hurting anyone. Um, Privileges and rights, they're interesting. I think the road example is interesting because I can see where, we took a free, right to travel in Rome and turned it into a taxable, finable um, activity that can be revoked at any time. It's interesting. Um, so privileges as opposed to rights. So yeah, rights are something that someone special grants you. So, or rather, privileges are granted to you by someone who's a right not to give you those things, right? By what right does the government keep you from using the road that used to be available to everybody? Um, it's an interesting question. Um, that's one of the biggest privilege conversations I think that's out there is, driving is a privilege, not a right. They hammer you on that in the little guidebook when you get your driver's license, because you got to have a license renewed every year at cost, or every couple years at cost, because you wouldn't want to forget how to drive now, would you? But they need the revenue, right? It's ridiculous. It keep you coming back for fines and fees and such, and they haven't improved your driving at all. They're just collecting money. Um, Driving's the obvious one. Not sure about another privilege that, or something that has become a privilege that used to be a right. Apparently, during COVID, breathing was a privilege. Breathing fresh air was a privilege, not a right. Um, you had little mask Nazis out everywhere, uh, you know, violating people for having the temerity, the audacity, the chutzpah to breathe clean, fresh air rather than have to recycle their respiratory exhaust. I mean, come on. Um, and that was obviously a violation. A lot of people made excuses for it, but you shall put this on your face or else. That's pretty authoritarian right there. Let's see, other privileges: driving, traveling. Driving is a privilege, but traveling's a right. Figure that one out. Breathing is a necessary component of life, but it's only on the days we say it is. Can you breathe freely? And other days, when we decide that there's an emergency, we can say that no, you're not allowed to breathe. That's really weird. I just thought of something and I lost it again. Anyway, I'm done with privileges.